Lady, this way. There's a trap over there. Would you risk your life to save someone who's supposed to be your enemy? That's the question Maya Daniels never thought she'd have to answer, until a 9-year-old boy made the choice for her. The rain fell in sheets across the container yard that night, turning dock lights into blurred halos. Maya crouched behind a rust-streaked shipping container, her badge cold against her ribs, her weapon steady in her hands. She was there to bring down Yoon Tae-sung, the mafia boss, the ghost who turned violence into profit. But the boy wasn't supposed to be there. He walked between two men in dark coats, small frame swimming in an oversized jacket, a backpack that looked like it weighed more than he did. His steps were careful, measured, like he'd learned the hard way what happened when you moved too fast. Maya's earpiece crackled. Target acquired. Yoon's people are in position. Somewhere in the shadows, the boss was watching, calculating. The boy stopped under a light. For just a second, Maya saw her younger brother Marcus. The same thin shoulders, the same defeated posture. Marcus had been 12 when the streets took him, when she'd arrived 6 minutes too late to save his life. One of the men shoved the boy forward. "Go, deliver it." The boy clutched the backpack straps. His lips moved, maybe a prayer, maybe just counting steps to stay calm. Then the first shot cracked the air. Everything collapsed into chaos, men shouting, car engines roaring to life. Maya's team rushed in too early and the rival gang opened fire in response. Maya ran, weapon drawn, her training kicking in, but her heart was hammering a single thought, not another kid. A bullet shattered the container beside her head. Metal shrieked. She stumbled, hit the wet asphalt hard. Her gun skittered into darkness. Above her, a man raised his weapon, his face blank with intent. "This is it." But a small hand grabbed her wrist. "Lady, this way." The boy, pulling her with impossible strength. He dragged her behind a stack of pallets, shoved her into a gap between containers. "There's a trap by the crane," he gasped. "Don't go that way. Stay low." His eyes were dark, ancient, the kind of eyes that had already learned what adults looked like when they lied. Maya pressed her hand to his shoulder. "Who are you?" But footsteps were pounding closer. The boy glanced back, fear flashing across his face. "Run," Maya whispered. He hesitated. Then a figure in a black coat appeared and yanked him into the smoke. The boy looked back once, just once, before vanishing. Maya stayed there, bleeding from a gash on her temple, listening to the siren's wail. A decoy boy used by criminals had just saved a cop's life. The hospital corridor at 3 in the morning felt like a fluorescent-lit purgatory. Maya sat on a plastic chair, a bandage wrapped around her head, exhaustion pulling at her bones. Captain Morris stood over her, arms crossed. "You compromised the entire operation." A child was in the crossfire, a decoy used by criminals, not our responsibility. He dropped a file on her lap. Ken, no last name, no birth certificate, no guardian. The rival gang bought him from the slums 3 months ago, paid off his mother's debts. He's nobody, Daniels. Maya's jaw tightened. That nobody pulled me out of a kill shot. Morris sighed, the sound of a man ground down by bureaucracy. "The deal's blown. The mayor's office is furious. You're suspended pending review. Go home. Stay away from this case." His footsteps echoed away down the hall. Maya stared at the file. Ken's photo, grainy, taken from street surveillance, showed a boy with watchful eyes, and a toy car clutched to his chest. 3 years ago, she'd lost Marcus in a raid just like this one. Same chaos, same miscalculation. She'd arrived 6 minutes too late, and he'd bled out on concrete while she held him. She couldn't stop seeing Ken's face, the way he'd looked back before disappearing. Down the hall, a door opened. A man stepped out, tall, dark suit, silver cufflinks catching the harsh light. His face was carved from stone. Yoon Tae-sung. Maya's hand moved instinctively toward her weapon, but she had no authority here, no backup, just a debt she didn't know how to repay. Tae-sung spoke quietly to a younger man beside him, his lieutenant, sharp-eyed and efficient. "The rival gang used the boy to destabilize us," the lieutenant murmured. "He's a liability now, to them and to us." Tae-sung's jaw tightened. "Where is he?" "Room 304. The hospital's releasing him in 2 hours. No papers, no guardian. He'll be back on the streets by dawn." Through the window, Maya saw Ken, curled on a hospital bed in his dirty jacket, clutching that toy car with peeling paint. No one sat with him. Tae-sung walked past Maya without acknowledgement, but she watched him pause at the nurse's station, watched him pull out identification. "Temporary guardianship," the nurse said. "You'll need to return for follow-up appointments." Maya's stomach dropped. The boss was taking the boy. She moved toward the room, but a security guard blocked her path. "Family only." "I'm not family." Through the glass, she watched Tae-sung enter. He stood at the foot of the bed, looking down at Ken with an expression she couldn't read. But she saw it, just for a heartbeat, the way his hand curled into a fist, the way his eyes flickered with something buried deep. He was remembering something. Ken woke, groggy and scared. His first instinct was to curl smaller. Tae-sung's voice was low. "You're coming with me." Ken's voice cracked. "Where?" "Somewhere they can't use you again." "Why?" Tae-sung's jaw tightened. "Because I know what it's like to be the tool instead of the person." Maya pressed her palm to the glass. Ken saw her, recognized her, and hope flickered across his face. But Tae-sung stepped between them, blocking the view. When the door opened again, Ken was gone. Maya stood alone in the hallway, the word "missing" stamped across the file in her hands. The mansion wasn't warm. Marble floors that echoed when you walked. High ceilings that swallowed sound. Too many empty rooms filled with expensive furniture that no one used. Ken stood in the entryway, his backpack at his feet, his toy car hidden in his pocket, where it felt like the only thing in the world that was truly his. A woman in a gray uniform gestured toward the stairs without smiling, her face as cold as the marble beneath their feet. "Second floor, 3rd door on the right. Don't wander the halls. Don't touch anything you're not explicitly told to touch. Understand?" Ken nodded. Questions only made things worse. He'd learned that lesson years ago. The dining room stretched out like a museum exhibit. Long table that could seat 12, crystal chandelier overhead. Only one place setting at the far end, perfectly arranged like something from a magazine. Tae-sung sat there, reading something on a tablet, his suit jacket draped over the chair beside him. He didn't look up when Ken entered, though Ken knew he'd heard the footsteps. "Sit." Ken sat 3 chairs away, keeping distance between them like a safety buffer. Tae-sung finally glanced at him, his gaze assessing. "You'll follow my rules. First rule, don't speak about the docks or what you saw there to anyone. Second rule, don't go into the east wing of the house. It's off limits." Third rule, don't trust anyone outside these walls. Understand? Ken's throat was dry. Yes, sir. Do you understand why you're here? Ken thought about the men who'd used him before, about the rival boss who'd handed him the backpack and said, "If you run, we'll find your mother." She'd been dead for 2 years, but Ken had never corrected him. Sometimes fear kept you alive longer than truth. You're keeping me, so they can't use me again, Ken said quietly, his voice steady despite the fear. Taesung's expression didn't change, but his hand, resting on the table, tightened almost imperceptibly around the stylus he was holding. You're smarter than most adults I negotiate with. Ken looked down at his hands. How long do I stay? As long as it takes. For what? For them to forget about you, or for me to make them forget. Taesung set down his tablet. Are you hungry? The question caught Ken off guard. Adults didn't usually ask. They just decided for you. A little. Taesung pressed a button and the woman in gray appeared. Bring food, whatever children eat. That night, Ken lay in a bed too big for one child, in a room with walls painted a neutral beige that felt like nowhere. Security cameras blinked red in the corners. He'd spotted them immediately. He pulled out the toy car and ran it along the blanket, the wheels clicking softly in the silence, the only familiar sound in this strange new world. Outside his door, Taesung stood in the hallway. He didn't knock, didn't enter, just listened to the sound of a child trying not to cry, trying to be quiet, trying to be invisible. In his mind, he saw himself at that age, 9 years old, locked in basements when his father's enemies came calling, used as leverage in deals he didn't understand, betrayed by every adult who'd promised safety, promised family, promised anything. He'd made rules to survive. Never negotiate with those who take hostages. It only encourages them. Never let emotions interfere with business decisions. Never let anyone become a weakness that could be exploited. The boy was already breaking all of them. His phone buzzed, a message from his lieutenant. The rival gang is asking questions about the boy. They want him back. They're threatening retaliation. Taesung stared at the closed door where a child slept alone and afraid. He typed, "No." "Boss, this could start a war. Is one street kid worth that?" Taesung paused, his thumb hovering over the screen. Then, "Yes, he is. Understood. I'll prepare our defenses." Across the city, Maya sat in her cramped apartment, staring at Ken's file on her laptop. Missing. No legal guardian glowed on the screen like an accusation she couldn't ignore. She opened a map, started marking locations. Security cameras near Taesung's known properties. Schools in the wealthy districts, markets, parks, anywhere a boy might surface if he was allowed outside. Her captain had told her to walk away, to let it go, to focus on saving her career. But Ken had saved her life, and Maya Daniels had spent 3 years drowning in guilt for the life she couldn't save, for the brother she'd lost, for every second she'd been too late. She picked up her phone, started calling in favors from contacts who walked the line between legal and not, from informants who owed her, from people who understood that sometimes the right thing wasn't the legal thing. "I'm looking for a boy," she said to each one. 9 years old, Korean organized crime took him from the hospital. I need eyes on the street. I need to know if he's okay. Marcus had died because she'd hesitated, because she'd followed protocol instead of instinct. She wouldn't make that mistake twice. If this story is pulling at your heart, subscribe and stay with us. This is only the beginning. 3 weeks passed like water through cupped hands. The alley behind the noodle shop smelled like grease, ginger, and rainwater that never quite dried from the pavement. Ken wiped down a stack of dishes, his hands red from hot water, his back aching from standing on a crate to reach the industrial sink. He wasn't supposed to be here. Taesung's rules were clear. Stay inside, stay safe, stay invisible. But the mansion felt like a cage wrapped in expensive silk. And Ken had learned a long time ago that sitting still, being dependent, owing people, it made you a target. It made you weak. At least here, washing dishes for the tired owner who asked no questions, he could earn $5, buy his own snacks, not owe anyone anything. The back door swung open. The owner, a tired woman with flour on her apron and kind eyes, glanced at him. "You're too young for this work, kid." "I'm careful. I won't break anything." "Where's your guardian? That man who brought you here?" Ken's hands paused in the soapy water. "At work." She didn't believe him. He could see it in her face. But she needed the help, and he needed the independence, so she handed him another stack of dishes without pressing further. He finished, pocketed the crumpled bills, and slipped into the evening air. The sun was setting, painting the alley in shades of orange and shadow. That's when he saw her, Maya, standing at the alley's mouth, backlit by streetlights. She'd tracked him through 3 weeks of surveillance footage, bribing a street vendor for the tip about a boy who came to wash dishes every Tuesday and Thursday. Ken froze, his heart jumping into his throat. "Hey," Maya said softly, her hands visible and empty, her posture non-threatening. "Remember me?" He nodded slowly. "I've been worried about you. Are you okay? Are you safe?" Ken's heart raced. "You shouldn't be here." "Why not? I just want to make sure." "Because he'll know. He has cameras, people watching, and then you'll be in danger too." Before Maya could respond, a black car pulled up to the curb with the quiet purr of an expensive engine. The door opened. Taesung's lieutenant stepped out, stone-faced, efficient, his hand resting casually near his jacket where Maya knew a weapon would be concealed. "Ken, car, now!" Ken's stomach dropped. He looked between them, Maya's genuine concern, the lieutenant's cold efficiency. Then Taesung himself emerged from the car, unfolding from the back seat with controlled grace. His gaze landed on Maya like a blade finding flesh. "Officer Daniels," his voice was quiet, dangerous. "You're remarkably persistent for someone who's suspended." Maya straightened, falling into old habits despite having no badge, no authority. "I'm not on duty." "Then you have no business here. That boy saved my life. I owe him a debt." Taesung stepped closer, close enough that Maya could smell his expensive cologne, could see the calculation in his eyes. "He's under my legal guardianship. Paperwork filed. Judge approved. If you try to interfere, you'll be the one breaking the law." Maya's jaw set, her hands clenching at her sides. Guardianship or imprisonment in a gilded cage? "He has food, shelter, education, safety." Taesung's voice was cold, controlled. "What can you offer? A foster system that will lose him in 6 months? Streets where the rival gang will find him in 6 hours? "I can offer him freedom, choice, a life that doesn't involve looking over his shoulder." "Freedom?" Taesung's laugh was bitter. "The rival gang wants him dead for what he saw. Your department doesn't care if he lives or dies. He's not a citizen, not a statistic that matters. I'm the only thing standing between him and a shallow grave. So tell me, officer, who's the real threat here?" The words hit home. Maya flinched because she knew he was right about the system, about the department that had suspended her for caring too much. They both turned to Ken. The boy stood there, small and trapped between two worlds. He wanted to run to Maya. She looked at him like he mattered, like he was human instead of useful, like his life had value beyond what he could do for others. But Tae-sung had given him safety, had stood between him and the men who'd hurt him before, had kept his promises so far. Ken's voice cracked. "I don't want anyone hurt because of me. Not her. Not you, nobody." Maya's expression softened immediately. She crouched down, ignoring the wet pavement, meeting his eyes at his level. "You won't be, I promise you, Ken. But if you ever need me, if you're scared, if something feels wrong, you call me, okay? Day or night." She pressed a folded paper into his hand, her touch gentle. Her number written in careful print, laminated so it wouldn't smudge. Tae-sung watched this exchange with an expression Maya couldn't read. Watched Maya speak to Ken not as a child to be managed, but as an equal to be respected, like someone who owed a debt and intended to pay it with interest. For the first time in his life, he saw an adult admit to a child. "I owe you something." His hand rested on Ken's shoulder, gentle but protective. "Let's go home." Ken climbed into the car, his fingers tight around Maya's number. Through the window, he watched her stand alone as they drove away, her silhouette growing smaller. In the back seat, silence hung heavy between them. Ken whispered, "She's not a bad person. She's a cop. She's lonely, like us." Tae-sung glanced at him sharply. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition of another person who could read grief in adult faces, who understood that loneliness wore many disguises. He didn't respond, but he didn't take the paper away. Spring arrived quietly, tentatively, like it wasn't sure it was welcome. Ken stuck a drawing on the refrigerator one morning, 3 stick figures holding hands. One tall with dark hair, one with curls, one small in the middle, smiling. Tae-sung stared at it every morning while his coffee brewed, his expression unreadable. The housekeeper reached to take it down. It didn't match the kitchen's aesthetic, but he stopped her with a single shake of his head. The drawing stayed. Slowly, imperceptibly, the house began to transform. Ken left his shoes by the door instead of hiding them in his room. Started humming while doing homework at the dining table instead of working in silence. Asked one evening, voice tentative, if he could plant flowers in the back garden. Tae-sung said yes. Before he could stop himself, before he could calculate the risk of letting the boy establish roots. One Saturday morning, Ken gathered his courage. "Can we go outside, just to the park, for an hour?" Tae-sung's lieutenant raised an eyebrow, his concern evident. "Boss, it's not secure. The rival gang has surveillance throughout the city. They could—" But Tae-sung looked at Ken's hopeful face, at the way the boy had started to smile more often, and heard himself say, "1 hour, you stay within sight." They went. The park was full of families, children on swings, their laughter carried on spring breeze. Couples sharing lunch on blankets, dogs chasing balls. the kind of normal life that felt foreign to both of them. Tae-sung sat under a tree, hands in his coat pockets, watching Ken chase pigeons with breadcrumbs. The boy's laughter was rusty, unpracticed, but genuine. Then he saw her, Maya, sitting on a bench across the path, pretending to read a book about urban planning that she held upside down. She wasn't subtle. She'd never been good at surveillance. Ken noticed too. His face lit up like someone had turned on a light inside him. And before Tae-sung could intervene, the boy ran over. "Maya!" She smiled, genuinely, the kind that reached her eyes and softened years of grief and guilt. "Hey, kiddo, fancy seeing you here." Ken grabbed her hand, then turned and grabbed Tae-sung's, his small fingers wrapping around both of theirs. "Both of you, sit together, please. I'm tired of you being far apart." Tae-sung's first instinct was to refuse, to pull Ken back, to leave immediately and lecture him about safety protocols. But Ken's grip was firm, and his eyes were pleading in a way that made something in Tae-sung's chest tighten uncomfortably. Maya met Tae-sung's gaze over the boy's head. "I'm not here for trouble, just checking in." "You're always checking in." "Someone has to care." Tae-sung sat, his movements controlled, his posture rigid, guarded. Ken plopped between them on the bench, grinning like he'd won a major victory. "Maya, try this." Ken handed her a cookie from his pocket, slightly crushed but offered with pride, then turned to Tae-sung. "You want the fancy pastry you bought?" Tae-sung had, in fact, stopped at an expensive French bakery on the way. He handed one to Ken. Ken took a bite of both, alternating, then laughed. "They're both good. Different, but good together." Maya and Tae-sung sat in awkward silence, the tension between them palpable. Ken filled it with chatter. "Maya, did you know Mr. Yoon lets me have ice cream after dinner now?" "Does he?" Maya's eyebrows raised. "That's nice of him." "Only if I finish my vegetables first," Tae-sung muttered, feeling strangely defensive, "and do my homework." "And Maya, Mr. Yoon bought me new shoes, see?" Ken stuck out his foot, showing off sneakers that actually fit. "They light up." "Those are cool," Maya agreed, her smile growing. Over the following weeks, it happened again and again. The park became their neutral ground. Sometimes the bookstore, where Ken would drag both of them to the children's section and read aloud, showing off his improving skills. A quiet cafe where Ken insisted they both sit while he worked on comic book drawings. Maya started bringing small gifts, a notebook with spaceships on the cover, a pack of markers that smelled like fruit, a book about astronauts. Tae-sung bought Ken clothes that fit properly, shoes that didn't pinch, a backpack without holes, books about anything the boy showed interest in. Neither adult said it aloud, but they were building something fragile and important. One afternoon in the park, Ken was running ahead when 3 men in dark jackets appeared near the playground entrance. Tae-sung's hand shot out instantly, grabbing Ken's shirt collar and pulling him back with practiced efficiency. "Stay behind me," he said quietly, his voice steel. Maya stood immediately, her hand moving to her hip, where her weapon used to be, before remembering her suspension, before remembering she was alone and unarmed. The men walked past, just coincidence, just people passing through. But Tae-sung didn't release Ken's shirt until they disappeared completely from view. Maya saw it then, the protective instinct that ran bone deep, the fear beneath the control, the way Tae-sung's hand trembled slightly before he steadied it. You actually care about him, she said quietly once Ken had run off again, oblivious to the danger that hadn't materialized. Taesung's jaw tightened. He's my responsibility. That's not what I'm talking about, and you know it. Taesung looked at Ken, who was laughing again, building a castle in the sandbox with another child. He's the first person in 30 years who's made me care if I come home at night, who makes me want to be better than what I am. Maya's expression softened with understanding. Me too. After my brother, I thought I'd lost the ability to care about anything. But Ken, he reminds me why it matters. Their eyes met. Understanding passed between them. Two people broken by their worlds, finding something worth protecting, worth fighting for, worth changing for. Ken ran back, breathless and happy. Can we get ice cream? All three of us? Sure, Maya said. Taesung nodded. They walked together, Ken swinging between them, holding both their hands, completely unaware that he was stitching together two people who should have been enemies. For a moment, to anyone watching, they looked exactly like a family. That evening, in Taesung's garden, Ken watered the flowers he'd planted weeks ago. Tiny green shoots had broken through the soil, reaching for sunlight. Taesung stood on the porch, watching, a glass of whiskey in his hand that he wasn't drinking. His lieutenant approached, his expression concerned. Boss, people are talking. In our world, in theirs. They say you're compromised. They say you've gone soft. I know. The rival gang is watching. They know about the woman. They know she's police. They know she matters to the boy. And they know the boy matters to you. I'm aware. This boy is making you vulnerable, giving them leverage, and her, she's an unknown variable we can't control. I know that too. Then why continue this? Why risk everything you've built? Taesung set down his glass, his eyes still on Ken, because for the first time in my life, I understand what I've been missing, what I've been running from. What matters more than power. Inside, Ken called out, Mr. Yoon, come see. The flowers are growing. Taesung's expressions softened in a way his lieutenant had never seen before. Across town, Maya sat at her kitchen table, staring at a photo on her phone, Ken grinning, holding up a drawing of all three of them. She'd snapped it at the park when he wasn't looking. For the first time in 3 years, the ache in her chest felt less like grief and more like hope, less like drowning and more like surfacing. She whispered to the empty room, to the memory of her brother. Maybe I get a second chance, Marcus. Maybe this time I won't be too late. The message arrived on a Wednesday, shattering the fragile peace they'd built. Maya's phone buzzed during her morning coffee, the sound too loud in her quiet apartment. A photo, no text, no explanation needed. Ken, walking to school in his new jacket, a red circle drawn around his face, the timestamp from that morning. Her blood turned to ice. She tried calling Taesung, no answer. Tried his lieutenant, voicemail, tried the main number for his security company front, nothing. Then her phone rang, unknown number. Her hand shook as she answered. Officer Daniels. The voice was smooth, amused, dripping with false courtesy. The rival boss. Do you know where your little hero is right now? If you touch him, such passion. I can see why the boy risked himself for you. A pause. I want Yoon Tae-sung to remember who he is. He's forgotten the rules of our world. That boy, he's my reminder, my message. What do you want? Want? I want Tae-sung to remember that emotions are weakness, that attachments are leverage, that in our world, caring about someone is the same as signing their death warrant. The line went dead. Maya grabbed her jacket and ran for the door, her heart pounding, her mind calculating routes and backup plans and possibilities. Across the city, Tae-sung sat in a private room at a Korean barbecue restaurant, steam rising from the grill, between him and his lieutenant. They were supposed to be discussing a legitimate business deal, the kind that kept their operations looking clean. His phone buzzed, a video file from an unknown sender. He opened it, Ken, in the park, holding Maya's hand, laughing at something she'd said. The timestamp from yesterday. A second video, Ken and Maya at the ice cream stand, sharing jokes. A third, all three of them walking together, Ken swinging between them like a bridge. A fourth, Ken's school, his route home, his favorite places. Every moment documented, cataloged, weaponized. The message was clear. We've been watching everything. We know every weakness. Tae-sung's expression didn't change, but his hand curled into a fist, so tight his knuckles went white. They know, his lieutenant said quietly, unnecessarily. They know she's connected to him, to you. They've been building a file. Tae-sung stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. Call the school, right now. The lieutenant dialed, pressing the phone to his ear. Listened. His face went pale as milk. Boss, the teacher says Ken left an hour ago. She thought it was strange. Someone came to pick him up, said there was a family emergency, showed documentation. Tae-sung's voice was deadly quiet. What documentation? Temporary guardianship papers. In your name. She thought you'd sent someone. I didn't. The silence that followed was suffocating. Tae-sung and his lieutenant ran for the car. Maya arrived at the school minutes later, having broken every traffic law to get there. They met in the parking lot, breathless, staring at each other with barely controlled panic. For a moment, old instincts flared, the need to blame, to lash out, to make the fear into anger. We need to talk, Tae-sung said, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. Somewhere private. Where? Follow me. They drove separately back to the Korean barbecue restaurant. Tae-sung dismissed his lieutenant with a single look that said, Give us the room. Inside the private room, the grill sat cold between them, the steam long dissipated. Maya spoke first, her voice shaking. They sent me a photo. They're tracking him. I know. They sent me videos. Tae-sung's voice was sharp, edged with fear he was trying to control. You made him visible. I was trying to help. By connecting yourself to him publicly, by giving them a target, by showing them exactly how to hurt me. Maya's hands trembled. You're the one who pulled him into this world in the first place. You made him a target the second you signed those guardianship papers. I gave him safety. I gave him a life. You gave him a different kind of prison. They were shouting now, old wounds tearing open, guilt and fear and 3 years of pain, spilling over like flood water. Tae-sung slammed his hand on the table, making the utensils jump. You think I don't know what I've done? Every day he's with me, he's in the crosshairs. Every smile, every laugh, every flower he plants, it's all ammunition they can use. But at least he's breathing, at least he's alive. Until when? Until they do exactly what they're doing right now? Better than watching the system fail him. Better than foster care that would lose him. Better than... Maya's phone rang, cutting through their argument like a knife. They both froze, staring at the screen. She answered on speaker, her hand shaking. Ken's voice small and terrified. "Maya? Ken, baby, where are you?" But the voice that answered wasn't Ken's. "Hello, Officer Daniels, and I'm sure Yoon Tae-sung is listening too. How predictable you both are." The rival boss. In the background, they heard Ken's sharp intake of breath, a whimper of fear he was trying to suppress. Maya's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. "If you hurt him, that depends entirely on cooperation. Yoon, you know what to do. Bring the shipment, every last package, all of it. And prove you remember the old rules. Prove you remember who you really are." Taesung's voice was ice and fury. "What rules? You know exactly what I mean. Kill the cop. Prove you're still one of us. Or the boy dies screaming your name." Silence stretched like a chasm. Then Ken's voice, breaking with terror. "Don't listen to him. Please don't." The sound of impact, a cry of pain. Ken sobbing, the line went dead. Maya's phone clattered onto the table. She stared at it. As her breathing ragged, her mind racing through every possible scenario and finding no good options. Taesung stared at the blank screen. His carefully constructed walls were crumbling brick by brick. Every rule he'd built to survive: never negotiate, never let emotions interfere, never let anyone become a weakness. All of it was meaningless now. "I can't save him," he said, his voice raw and broken in a way Maya had never heard. "Not without becoming exactly what they want. Not without destroying everything he's helped me become." Maya picked up her phone, her hands steadying as years of training took over. "Then we don't do this alone." Taesung looked at her, really looked, saw the same desperation he felt, the same determination, the same absolute refusal to let a child die. "You understand what they're demanding. I know. You'd risk everything, your life?" Maya met his eyes, her voice steady as stone. "For Ken, I'd risk anything, everything." For the first time, Taesung saw her not as an enemy, not as an obstacle, not as a cop who wanted to destroy his world. He saw her as someone who understood exactly what they stood to lose. Someone who loved that boy as much as he did. "Then we break every rule," he said. "All of them. Together." The abandoned warehouse sat at the industrial district's edge, a skeleton of rusted metal and shattered glass. Inside, shadows moved in the dim light, filtering through broken windows. Ken sat tied to a chair in the center of the empty space, his wrists raw from the rope, his breathing shallow and quick. A dried streak of blood ran from his temple, where they'd hit him when he'd tried to fight back. He wasn't crying now. Tears didn't stop bad men. He'd learned that lesson years ago. But he was terrified in a way that made his whole body shake. The rival boss leaned against a metal railing, smoking a cigarette, watching Ken with the detached interest of someone studying an insect. "Your guardian will be here soon. Then we'll see what you're really worth." Ken's voice was hoarse from crying earlier. "Why are you doing this?" "Because Yoon Tae-sung forgot the rules. He went soft, started caring about things." The man laughed, the sound echoing off empty walls. "And children make excellent teachers, excellent leverage." "He won't come." "Oh, he'll come. They both will. The cop and the boss together. How romantic." He flicked ash onto the floor. A street rat worth nothing. No family, no papers, no one who should care. Yet here we are. Ken didn't respond. He thought about the flowers he'd planted in the garden, wondering if they'd bloom. About Maya's smile and the way she always remembered to ask about his homework. About the way Tae-sung had started leaving the drawing on the refrigerator, had started asking about his day, had started to become something like a father. They care about me. The thought was warm and terrifying in equal measure. 3 blocks away, Maya and Tae-sung sat in a parked van, surrounded by equipment they'd hastily assembled. Between them was a duffel bag, supposedly filled with the shipment the rival boss had demanded. It was filled with newspaper and weights, a decoy. Maya checked her weapon for the 3rd time, her movements automatic, trained. They'll kill you the second this is over, you know that. I know. And you're still going. Tae-sung's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping in his cheek. I promised Ken he'd be safe with me, that I'd protect him. I don't break promises to children. Maya studied him in the dim light of the van. The cold mafia boss was gone, stripped away by fear and love. In his place was a man terrified of failing someone who mattered more than his own life. You've changed, she said softly. I had to. He looked at her, his eyes carrying weight she understood. You saved him at the docks that first night. Now it's my turn. An hour earlier, they'd met in a storage unit on the city's outskirts. Planning, preparing, gathering equipment. I can't save him alone, Tae-sung had confessed, his voice breaking for the first time since Maya had known him. Not without becoming exactly what they want. A monster. I can't. I won't let Ken see me become that. Maya had stepped closer, closing the distance between them. I can't save a child trapped in your world without someone who knows how it works, how they think, how they operate. Then we do this together. But Maya, if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. Maya, his voice was urgent, desperate. If I have to choose between saving you and saving Ken, you save Ken, every time, no hesitation. She'd taken his hand, squeezed it. I trust you. Do you trust me? He'd nodded, unable to speak past the emotion in his throat. Now, Maya's radio crackled. Her old partner, one of the few who'd believed in her, who'd helped despite the consequences, whispered through the line. We're in position. 3 exits covered. You'll have 2 minutes max before the precinct realizes we're here and shuts us down. Then you're on your own. Understood. Thank you. Be careful, both of you. Tae-sung pulled out his phone, texted his lieutenant. If I don't come back, make sure Ken gets to Maya. Protect him with everything we have. The response came immediately. Boss, you're really doing this, throwing away everything. Yes, he's worth more than everything I've built. Then I'm with you to the end. Your security team is standing by. Tae-sung and Maya approached the warehouse on foot, their steps synchronized, their breathing controlled. Tae-sung carried the fake duffel bag. Maya walked beside him, no visible weapon, her hands steady but her heart racing. They'd planned every detail, gone over every contingency. But plans rarely survived contact with reality. The warehouse door opened. Inside, the rival boss grinned, his smile sharp as broken glass. Yoon Tae-sung and his new friend. How touching this is. How disappointing. Tae-sung's gaze locked on Ken immediately. The boy's eyes were wide, terrified, but alive. That's all that mattered. He was alive. Let him go. After you prove your loyalty. The rival boss gestured lazily toward Maya. Shoot her, right here, right now. Prove you remember what you are. Tae-sung didn't move. Shoot her, or I put a bullet in the boy. Simple choice. Easy math. Ken's voice cracked, breaking. Please don't. Please. Tae-sung looked at Maya. Time seemed to stop, to stretch, to hold its breath. They'd planned this, rehearsed it, gone over every detail in that storage unit. The vest will hold, Maya had said, strapping on the concealed Kevlar. The blank will look real in the dark at this distance. If I miscalculate by an inch, if my hand shakes, you won't. I trust you with my life. Maya, I trust you. Now, in the warehouse, Maya gave the smallest nod, almost imperceptible. Tae-sung raised his gun, his hand steady, despite everything screaming inside him. Ken screamed, "No, don't, please don't!" The shot echoed like thunder in the empty space. Maya fell, her body hitting the concrete floor with a sickening thud. For a heartbeat, the world stopped breathing. Ken's scream tore through the air, raw and anguished. The rival boss laughed, lowering his guard, turning to his men with triumph on his face. Then chaos erupted like a breaking dam. Maya rolled, pulling aside the jacket where the blank had struck the hidden vest. She came up with a weapon drawn. Now! Smoke grenades hissed and exploded, filling the warehouse with thick white clouds. Doors burst open on all sides. Maya's backup team stormed in, former colleagues who'd believed her, who'd come despite the risk to their own careers. Tae-sung dove forward, pulling a knife from his belt and cutting Ken's ropes with practiced efficiency. Ken collapsed into his arms, his whole body shaking like he'd never stop. I thought you killed her. Look at me. Look. Ken turned, tears streaming down his face. Maya stood, breathing hard, very much alive. The vest hung open, a flattened blank round embedded in the Kevlar, exactly where it was supposed to be. She grinned, breathless and shaking with adrenaline. Theater isn't just for Broadway. The rival boss lunged for Ken, fury replacing triumph on his face. But Tae-sung was faster, his body moving on instinct and training. He blocked, twisted, used the man's momentum against him, and pinned him against a support beam, with enough force to knock the breath from his lungs. You used a child as a weapon, Tae-sung said quietly, his voice carrying more menace than any shout. You threatened an innocent life to settle a business dispute. That ends now, today, forever. Police swarmed the warehouse. The rival boss was dragged away in handcuffs, his threats dissolving into echoes that no one cared about. Ken ran to Maya first, crashing into her arms so hard she nearly fell. She knelt, catching him, holding him while he sobbed against her shoulder. "You're safe," she whispered, pressing her face to his hair, breathing him in. "You're safe now. I've got you." Then Ken pulled back and ran to Tae-sung, threw his arms around him and held on like drowning, like falling, like being saved. Tae-sung stood frozen for a heartbeat, his carefully constructed walls finally, completely shattered. Then his arms came around the boy, tight and fierce and protective. "I've got you," he murmured, his voice rough with emotion he'd spent 30 years learning to hide. "I've got you. No one will hurt you again." In the dusty warehouse, surrounded by police and smoke and chaos, Ken cried between them, Maya's hand on his shoulder, Tae-sung's arms around him, both of them holding him like he was the most precious thing in the world. "I was so scared," Ken gasped between sobs. I thought I'd lost you both. Maya smoothed his hair with gentle hands. We're here. We're not going anywhere. Taesung's voice was steady despite the emotion. We promised we'd protect you. We keep our promises. Across the warehouse, Taesung's lieutenant caught his eye. The unspoken message was clear. You broke the code. Chose a child over the organization. There will be consequences. Taesung nodded, understanding. He'd known the cost from the beginning, and he'd paid it without hesitation. Because some things were worth more than power, more than money, more than an empire built on fear. The hospital rooftop was quiet in a way that felt sacred. Morning light spilled over the city, soft and golden, washing away the darkness of the night before. Ken sat on a bench, legs swinging, his toy car in his hand. Someone, maybe a nurse, maybe Taesung, had cleaned it, made it shine like new. Maya and Taesung stood a few feet away, voices low, exhaustion written in every line of their bodies, but determination in their eyes. The department's opening a full investigation, Maya said, her arms crossed against the morning chill. They want me to testify about everything that happened, everything I know about your organization. And will you? She looked at him steadily. I'll tell them the truth, that you cooperated, that you refused to harm an innocent person, that you risked everything, your empire, your life, to save a child who wasn't even yours. Taesung's expression was unreadable, carefully controlled. They won't believe you. Then I'll make them listen until they do. You'll lose what's left of your career. They'll say you were compromised, that you crossed lines. Maya's voice was steady as stone. I've already lost everything that mattered to me once. She paused, her gaze drifting to Ken. Except now I have something worth fighting for again. Taesung was silent, processing. Maya continued, choosing her words with care. There's a program, witness protection, reduced sentencing in exchange for testimony against the network. If you help dismantle what's left of the organization, if you provide evidence, they'd want everything, names, locations, operations. Yes, I'd be painting a target on my back for the rest of my life. Yes, Maya said again, but there's more. For Ken's custody to work, for any of this to work, you need to be someone the court can trust, someone who's earned redemption, not just claimed it. And you think I can be that person? I think you already are. You just need to prove it to everyone else. Taesung looked at Ken. The boy was laughing softly at something, running the toy car along the bench's edge, making engine sounds, completely innocent despite everything he'd been through. He'd once thought fatherhood was weakness, that caring was a liability, that love was surrender. Now he knew it was the only thing that made him strong, the only thing that made him human. I'll testify, Taesung said quietly. I'll give them everything they need. Maya exhaled, relief flooding her features. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm doing this for him, and for, he paused, for the chance to be better than what I was. Ken noticed them watching and ran over, breathless and smiling despite the bandage on his forehead. Can we get breakfast, all three of us together? Maya and Taesung exchanged a glance, understanding, partnership, the beginning of something neither of them had names for yet. Yeah, Maya said softly. We can. They walked down from the rooftop together, Ken in the middle, holding both their hands like it was the most natural thing in the world. At the diner, a small place with red vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner, Ken ordered pancakes with far too much syrup. Maya drank terrible diner coffee and smiled more than she had in 3 years. Tae-sung sat stiffly at first, unused to casual restaurants and public spaces, then slowly relaxed as Ken chattered about school, about the flowers he wanted to plant next, about a book he wanted them both to read to him. "Are you staying?" Ken asked suddenly, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth, syrup dripping. He was looking at Tae-sung with hope and fear mixed in his eyes. "For as long as they allow, probably longer." Ken turned to Maya. "And you?" "I'm not going anywhere, I promise." Ken nodded, satisfied in the way children are when adults finally tell them the truth. "Good, because I don't want to lose anyone else. I've lost too many people." Maya's throat tightened. She reached across and squeezed his hand. "You won't, not us." Taesung looked at her across the table. Something passed between them. Understanding, respect, the recognition that they'd both been broken and both been saved by a child who deserved neither of their burdens. "We're doing this together," he said, "whatever comes next." "Together," Maya agreed. Ken grinned, syrup on his chin. "Like a real family." Neither adult corrected him, neither wanted to. Months passed like seasons turning. Taesung testified in closed hearings that lasted weeks, provided evidence that dismantled operations spanning 3 cities, named names, showed locations, burned bridges he could never rebuild. He served reduced time in a minimum security facility, using the months to earn his GED, to take parenting classes that made him feel foolish and grateful in equal measure, to learn how to be the father Ken deserved. Maya left the force officially, her resignation accepted with minimal fanfare. She opened a community center in a neighborhood that needed one, a place for kids who'd fallen through the cracks, who had nowhere safe to go, who needed someone to believe they mattered. She named it Marcus's Place, after the brother she'd lost, the second chance she'd been given. The custody hearing was brief but intense. Taesung had completed his sentence, shown genuine remorse, changed his life completely. Character witnesses spoke on his behalf, including his lieutenant, who'd left the organization to become head of security at Maya's community center. Maya had a stable career, steady income, a home that was warm and welcoming. Her former captain testified reluctantly but honestly about her dedication, her integrity, her willingness to sacrifice everything for what was right. When the judge asked Ken who he wanted to live with, the boy didn't hesitate for even a heartbeat. Both of them. The courtroom fell into surprised silence. The judge looked at Maya, then at Taesung, her expression thoughtful. "That's highly unconventional, young man." "So are we," Maya said, her voice steady. "But we work," Taesung added quietly, his hands folded on the table. "We've already been his family for months. We're just asking the court to recognize what already exists." The judge studied them for a long moment, her eyes moving between the 3 of them, the reformed criminal, the former cop, and the child who'd somehow brought them together. Then she smiled, the expression transforming her stern face. "Joint custody approved. Unconventional, yes. But I've learned that family takes many forms. What matters is love, stability, and commitment." She looked at Ken. You're a lucky young man. I know, Ken said simply. That night in the small house they'd bought together, nothing like the cold mansion, nothing like Maya's cramped apartment, but warm and lived in and full of photographs on every wall. Ken ran through the hallway, his laughter echoing off walls covered in his drawings and achievements. Maya cooked dinner in the kitchen, something simple and warm that filled the house with the smell of garlic and herbs and home. She hummed while she stirred, a smile playing at her lips. Tae-sung set the table with careful precision. 3 plates, 3 chairs, 3 sets of utensils, a family. Ken ran up and hugged him around the waist without warning. Dad? Tae-sung froze at the word, the first time Ken had used it. Then he rested his hand on Ken's head, his touch gentle and sure. Yeah, son? Thank you for keeping your promise, for not giving up on me. Tae-sung's voice was soft, thick with emotion he no longer tried to hide. Thank you for teaching me how to keep promises, for showing me what matters. Maya appeared in the doorway, watching them with eyes bright with happy tears she didn't bother wiping away. Ken ran to her next, his arms wrapping around her waist. Mom! She knelt immediately, pulling him close, breathing in the scent of his shampoo and childhood and second chances. Yeah, sweetheart? I love you. I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes. Good scared or bad scared? Maya laughed through her tears. The best kind of scared, the kind that means you have something precious to protect. They sat together at the table as the sun set outside, passed food, shared stories about their days. Ken talked about a project at school, about the new kids at Maya's center who he was helping feel welcome, about wanting to plant more flowers when spring came again. Through the window, the sun set in shades of gold and rose and purple, painting the world in warmth. Tae-sung caught Maya's eye across the table. She smiled, that genuine smile that reached her eyes and spoke of healing, of hope, of home. We did it, she mouthed silently. We did, he agreed, equally silent. Ken looked up from his food, catching them. What are you two smiling about? You, Maya said without hesitation. Always you, Tae-sung added, his voice warm in a way it had never been in his previous life. Ken beamed, happiness radiating from him. He pulled out his toy car, the one he'd carried through everything, through danger and fear and uncertainty, and set it carefully in the middle of the table. This is us now, he said, his voice serious and young and wise all at once. Going the same way, together, forever. Maya reached across and squeezed his hand, her fingers warm. Tae-sung's fingers brushed Ken's hair with a gentleness he'd never known he possessed. In a world that had only believed in power and money, in violence and control, a boy had taught 2 broken people to believe in something better. In family, in love, in second chances and redemption earned through sacrifice. In the end, it wasn't them who saved him. It was the boy who saved them from themselves, from their pasts, from the worst versions of who they'd been. And together they built a family from the ruins of everything they used to be. A family chosen, fought for, earned, and cherished. If this inspirational story touched your heart, subscribe for more motivational tales of love, courage, and second chances. Leave a comment. What moment moved you most? We'd love to hear from you.